I stood at the edge of the driveway, keys dangling loosely in my hand, staring up at the house I'd once practically rebuilt with my own savings. The white paint on the front porch was chipping again. The old oak tree, once carved with our initials, now leaned slightly, a cable anchoring it to the ground, like a stubborn limb refusing to fall. It wasn't even my house anymore. Maybe it never really had been. That morning, I had only come by to help Dad scan insurance documents. The kind of thing I always did, quiet, simple, expected. It was supposed to take 20 minutes. Instead, it took everything. I'm Samantha Reed, 32. I work in operations management. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, and I am, according to my parents, the stable one. You know, the kind who pays bills on time, remembers birthdays, never asks for help, and always shows up. I've been showing up since I was 19. The house felt different today, like it had already decided I didn't belong here. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and dust. My mother always tried to keep things cozy with seasonal candles, but even that felt performative now. Vanessa's laugh drifted down from upstairs. I hadn't realized she was home. Of course she was. She always was. Vanessa Reed, my older sister by 3 years, painter/poet/life explorer, depending on the month. She had a way of making chaos look graceful, like a curtain blowing in a breeze you couldn't quite feel. She'd been living at home since her creative sabbatical turned into a permanent break. No job, no rent, just vision boards and emotional labor that, according to our mother, was exhausting in its own way. When we were kids, Vanessa used to draw rainbows on the fridge while I emptied the dishwasher. She'd cry when things didn't go her way. I'd be told to understand. Vanessa feels things more deeply, Mom would say. You're the strong one, Sam. Be patient. That became the refrain of my childhood strong, steady patient. Invisible. I walked into the dining room where Dad had left the documents. Medicare forms, utility bills, the usual. Neat little stacks like I was some kind of unpaid secretary. 10 minutes in, I found the cream folder thicker than the rest, labeled in Mom's handwriting, estate plan, final copy. I should have left it untouched. I didn't. But maybe that's the thing. You don't open wounds. You trip over them. And by the time you feel the sting, it's already bleeding. Outside, a wind chime rattled once on the porch. I had rehung that last spring when it broke in a storm. I'd paid for the new fixture myself. No one asked. No one thanked me. I flipped open the folder and read. And everything started to unravel. The will wasn't complicated. In fact, it was terrifyingly simple. The house fully paid off would go to Vanessa. The retirement funds, what was left of them, also to Vanessa. Life insurance, same. A line about honoring family legacy and trusting the emotional center of the household sealed it. My name appeared once. One line. We trust our daughters to care for one another, and we know Samantha will understand our intentions. That was it. After years of covering utilities, replacing their furnace in the dead of winter, rescheduling meetings so I could take Mom to her blood pressure appointments, I was a footnote. I stood there numb, the gentle hum of the scanner behind me. My dad walked back into the room with a mug of coffee and that lazy, unaware smile of his. You getting through that stack, Sam? I held up the folder. He paused mid-sip, eyes dropping to the cover. Then he sighed, long, heavy. A sigh that said everything he wasn't brave enough to explain. It's not what you think. I think it's exactly what I'm reading, I said. He looked down at the table like it might back him up. You're doing fine, Sam. You've always done fine. We didn't think you'd be upset. It was the same phrase I'd heard since college. You're doing fine was code for we expect you to need nothing. It was shorthand for we don't owe you anything. My voice stayed calm, but something cracked internally. Did you even talk to me about it? We just thought, Vanessa's still figuring things out. She needs stability. And I don't. You already have it. And just like that, the conversation ended, not because we were done, but because he thought that was enough. It always had been. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded, placed the folder back on the table, and stepped outside. The porch swing creaked under my weight, a familiar sound I used to find comfort in. I'd fixed that swing myself last summer when one of the chains snapped. Paid the contractor in cash. Mom had said she'd reimburse me. She never did. She forgot. Or maybe she didn't forget, maybe she knew I wouldn't ask. Vanessa hadn't helped. She said she was mentally exhausted that week, but she did paint a mural on the side of the garage the same afternoon. A bird with flaming wings, she said, a phoenix. Mom called it raw and brave. I remembered standing there with splinters in my fingers and a silent thought, no one calls me brave when I pay for things. They only call me strong, which is just a prettier way of saying, you'll do the hard stuff and we'll look away while you do it. That was the story of my life in this house. Not one of abuse, not even of hatred, just slow erasure. A love that looked polite on the surface, but left no room for me beneath it. Inside, Vanessa was playing her music again, soft, echoey piano chords, the kind you hear in indie films where people make bad decisions in beautiful lighting. I used to think we were close, Vanessa and I, that if I kept showing up one day, she'd meet me halfway. But maybe you can't build a bridge if the other side keeps moving. The wind picked up. A leaf tumbled across the porch. Somewhere behind me, the scanner beeped. Task completed. But something else had just begun. I didn't always mind paying. At first, it even felt good, like I was being useful, like I was making sure things didn't fall apart for the people I loved. That year, Dad had back surgery and couldn't work for 6 months. I quietly picked up the mortgage for 3 of those. Never mentioned it. Just saw the email notification, moved money from savings, and marked it down as family. I remembered the first time it happened. The furnace had blown out mid-winter. A cold snap was coming, and the contractor told me they needed $6,800 to replace the unit. Dad said they were trying to work something out with the bank. I didn't wait. I wired the full amount that afternoon. Vanessa had posted a moody black-and-white photo that night with the caption, "The world is cold, but we endure." The irony nearly choked me. Then came the little things, the ones that snuck up over time. A surprise charge here, a bounced insurance bill there. Mom called them hiccups, and I was always so helpful, sweetie. Like the money just materialized from the cloud. Never from my overtime shifts or canceled vacations. Vanessa once told me, dead serious, "You've always had this gift, Sam. Like you can manifest stability." I wanted to laugh or scream. I didn't do magic. I did math. I checked due dates. I hustled for promotions. I learned how to live on 20% less than I made so someone else could feel safe. They never asked outright. That's what made it harder. It was always wrapped in, if it's not too much trouble, or only if you're able. But behind it was the full weight of unspoken expectation. Because I was able. I made sure I was. There was that time I paid off the remaining $3,400 balance on their car loan because Dad said he was just tired of dealing with it. Or when Mom had a dental procedure and the insurance lapsed without notice. She cried on the phone, said she was embarrassed. I sent the payment within the hour. She sent back a thank you text with 3 heart emojis. That was the last time she acknowledged it. Vanessa, meanwhile, was planning a creative retreat in Portland. She said she needed time to recalibrate. The retreat lasted 6 weeks. I never knew who paid for her flight. Once, when I gently brought up the topic of finances over dinner, Mom deflected with a smile. "You know I always say we may not have a lot, but we're rich in love." I wanted to ask what love was worth per kilowatt hour, but I didn't. Because love in this house was measured in who didn't make a fuss, in who kept things going quietly, in who picked up the pieces before anyone noticed something broke. And for over a decade, that person had been me. Sometimes I wondered if they even remembered the deposits, the missed raises. The job I turned down in Chicago because Mom said she couldn't sleep at night when I was too far. I stayed. I helped. I said yes when no one asked me to. I became so dependable they forgot I could break. And slowly, piece by piece, I did. A few years back, I was offered a promotion in Boston. It wasn't just a raise, it was a whole new life. Director of operations, a corner office, relocation covered, mentorship under a woman I deeply admired. She told me, "We're building something here and I want you at the heart of it." I said I needed time to think. Mom had cried when I told her. Not out of pride, but panic. "You'd be so far," she said, voice already trembling. "I wouldn't sleep knowing you're alone out there." I reminded her that Boston wasn't the Arctic. It was a 2-hour flight. But her face told me distance wasn't measured in miles, it was measured in control. That night, Vanessa joined the conversation halfway through dinner. She was sipping red wine and sketching something in her notebook. I just think home matters more than hustle, she said. It's all ego anyway, chasing titles. Mom nodded like that was wisdom, like someone who'd never held a stable job was suddenly a life coach. Dad stayed quiet, but later while we were loading dishes, he muttered, "You don't want to be one of those women who burns out at 35. Stay close. Be smart." So I stayed. I turned down the job. I sent a polite email. My boss was disappointed but respectful. She said I'd always have a place there if I changed my mind. No one in my family brought it up again. Not even to say thank you. Vanessa never acknowledged it. 3 weeks later, she posted a series of photos from a forest immersion therapy session outside Sedona. "Let the roots hold you," she captioned. Mom shared it on Facebook with the comment, "Our free spirit." I was the rooted one, but Vanessa got the poetry. That's how it always was. I lived in the same city 20 minutes away, yet somehow I was the invisible orbit around a sun named Vanessa. Holidays were especially rich in irony. I bought gifts off thoughtful lists. She handed out handmade cards that read like horoscope affirmations. "You are water," she once wrote to Dad. He cried. I brought groceries every Sunday. I paid for their gas when prices spiked. I shoveled the walkway after storms. Vanessa bought incense and talked about energy flow. And still, Mom would lean in during movie nights, stroking Vanessa's hair like she was 16 again, and say things like, "Your sister just feels so deeply. She carries so much." I carried too. But what I carried had weight. It had numbers, due dates, and late fees. Sometimes I wondered if Vanessa even knew how much I'd sacrificed. Then I realized it didn't matter, because the one person I needed to notice wasn't her. It was me. And I hadn't. Not really. Until Boston. That was the moment I saw the leash for what it was: soft, velvet-lined, and wrapped in love, but a leash nonetheless. They didn't tie me down. I did it myself. For love. For family. For people who said, "Of course you'd stay. You always do." And I did. Until one day I wouldn't. The calls always started the same way. No hello. No "how are you, sweetheart." No interest in my day or my work, or whether I'd eaten dinner yet. Just a need. "Sam, the car insurance lapsed again." "Could you take care of it this time, Sammy?" The card bounced at the pharmacy. "I don't know why it must be a bank error. Can you try from your end?" "Sweetie, the fridge is making that noise again. I don't know if it's dying or just old. Vanessa says it's giving her a headache. Can we replace it soon?" They never sounded demanding. That was the trick. Their voices always stayed soft, like they were doing me a favor by asking gently. The words were dipped in sugar, but carried the weight of stone. Even my name changed in those moments. Samantha became Sammy, the childhood nickname reserved for requests wrapped in guilt. Once I let it go to voicemail. I was out with coworkers celebrating the end of a long project, something I'd led from scratch. We'd hit our numbers 3 months early. I was laughing for the first time in weeks when my phone buzzed on the table. Mom's cell. I let it ring. Then again. And again. 5 missed calls later, I finally stepped outside into the cold and called her back. "It's just that your sister has been feeling really overwhelmed," she said immediately, not even bothering with small talk. "And the Wi-Fi bill hasn't been paid. She said it's glitching and it's affecting her writing process, Vanessa's writing process. That would be the journal she filled with affirmations and watercolor moons." I asked, "Why doesn't she call the provider?" "She says you understand the online stuff better." That was the line. That I understood tech, even though I wasn't in IT. Just because I worked in operations didn't mean I was a walking help desk, but somehow over time I had become that too. I paid the bill, then sat on the curb outside the restaurant, too drained to go back in. My phone buzzed again, a text from Vanessa. "Thanks, Sam. You're a lifesaver." No punctuation, no mention of the 3 months of unpaid charges I'd just cleared. Just a pink heart and the word lifesaver, like I'd thrown her a float in a pool she'd chosen to sleep in. There was no balance in our relationship. There hadn't been for years. When Dad called, it was about the water heater. When Mom called, it was about groceries or insurance. When Vanessa texted, it was to forward a screenshot of an account error and a single line. "Can you fix this?" Not once did anyone ask, "How's your week?" Not once did they say, "We miss you." I tested this once. I stopped texting for a few days. didn't check in, didn't initiate. By day 4, I got a message from Mom. "Hey, just checking. Are you mad at us?" No, I wasn't mad. I was tired. Tired of being reduced to a line on their banking app. Tired of hearing my name only when something needed fixing. Tired of always showing up when no one ever truly saw me. Some people are raised to be the center of attention. Some are raised to be the center of gravity. I was the latter, the thing that held it all together, quietly, invisibly. But even gravity has limits. I used to tell myself that love was quiet, that real care didn't need applause, that being dependable was enough. But there's a fine line between humility and invisibility, and somewhere along the way, I crossed it. One Sunday night, I broke down over the sink while washing dishes. Nothing dramatic, just tears, silent, steady like the running water. I had worked 60 hours that week, paid for Mom's prescription, helped Vanessa submit an online grant application because she didn't trust the forms, and still no one had called just to say, "How are you holding up?" No one ever did. I stared at the kitchen window where my own reflection looked dull, tired, faded. The girl who once dreamed of leading a department, buying her own home, maybe traveling to Barcelona one summer, she wasn't there anymore. In her place was someone who lived in between crisis management and emotional avoidance, a professional daughter, a designated fixer, a name in their phone that meant handle it. Even my therapist once said gently, "Samantha, you've built an identity around being useful. What happens if you stop?" I didn't have an answer then, because stopping felt like betrayal, like if I stopped showing up, everything would fall apart. And worse, someone might call me selfish. That word selfish had hovered over my choices for years. I didn't dare say no to favors, didn't book vacations during sensitive times, didn't splurge on myself in case someone else needed something. Even the smallest indulgence came with guilt. Vanessa never carried that guilt. She could go off-grid for a week and return to applause. "She's re-centering," Mom would say. I once turned off my phone for a single afternoon and came back to 8 texts, 2 missed calls, and a voicemail from Dad asking if I was okay or being dramatic. Being dramatic. For needing silence. I started noticing the pattern more clearly after that. How every time I tried to step back, even a little someone in the family filled the gap with guilt. "Vanessa's overwhelmed," they'd say. "Mom's not sleeping. Dad's been stressed about the roof." And woven beneath it all was the assumption that I was fine, that I was built for this. But I wasn't. Not really. I was just practiced. There's a difference between being strong and being forced to carry everything because no one else will. One night after another long day, I scrolled through my call history. The last 10 incoming calls were from family. Every single one was a request, money help advice, logistics, not a single just checking in. I flipped through old texts. Vanessa had sent me a playlist once full of instrumental piano and bird sounds. "To help you center," she wrote. I almost laughed. I didn't need help centering, I needed someone to notice how far off balance I'd become. That was the loneliness of it. Not the being alone, but the knowing no one even thought to ask if you were. I didn't mean to find it. It was a Tuesday morning. I had come by the house before work to help Dad scan a stack of documents for his health insurance renewal. I'd done it countless times before. Their printer was a decade old and permanently stuck in a passive-aggressive war with their Wi-Fi. He joked that I was the only one who could make it behave. I didn't mind. It was routine. The stack was thick utility bills, prescription receipts, and outdated dental plan. I sorted through them quickly, hands moving, while my mind wandered elsewhere. Then I saw it. A cream-colored folder, thicker than the rest, labeled in Mom's neat handwriting, "Estate Plan, Final Copy." I paused, just for a moment. My name wasn't on the cover, but something about the weight of it made my chest tighten. I told myself not to open it, told myself it wasn't mine to read, but I had just covered their property tax bill 2 weeks earlier, had groceries delivered last Thursday, had already set a calendar reminder to reorder Mom's medication tomorrow, so I opened it. The first page was simple, legal. The kind of language that's supposed to feel impartial, but always leaves a bruise. The house, the retirement savings, the life insurance policy, all of it. to Vanessa. Every asset, every account, every last dime. There was no mention of me. Not until page 3 in a brief italicized note. We trust our daughters to care for one another and believe Samantha as the steady one will always ensure harmony remains. That was it. No record of the $11,000 I'd wired 4 years ago to cover the mortgage. No line about the insurance plans I renewed, the late-night pharmacy runs, the dentist co-pays. No thank you, not even a name, just an assumption that I would be fine, that I needed nothing, that I would understand. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. The hum of the scanner grew louder in my ears like static. My fingers trembled, but I didn't drop the folder. I read it twice. Then again. My eyes trying to find a line I missed, some fine print that made it better. That proved it was just a draft. That said, of course we'd never forget you, but that line didn't exist. The front door creaked open. I heard Dad shuffle in, coffee in hand. "You getting through that stack, Sam?" he asked. I turned toward him, holding the folder in both hands like a verdict. "Is this real?" I asked, voice steady but cold. "Everything to Vanessa." He froze. His mug hovered halfway to his lips. Then he let out a long, weathered sigh, the kind people make when they've been caught in something they hoped would never come up. "It's not what you think. I think it's exactly what I'm holding." He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize, just looked down, searching for words he couldn't seem to find. Finally, he said, "We figured you'd understand." There it was, the phrase, "again." I laughed, soft bitter. "You figured I'd understand being erased. No one's erasing you, Samantha. You're just strong. You've always done well. Strong, reliable, stable. I was so many admirable things, just not worth including." I placed the folder back on the table with more care than it deserved. My father watched me, unsure of whether to speak or stay silent. He chose the latter. I walked out the front door. The porch swing creaked as I sat. I had fixed that swing myself 2 summers ago when it broke in a storm, paid for the new chain, bought the cushion, installed it without being asked. No one had mentioned it. That swing held more memory than I did in their will. The oak tree rustled in the wind. A gust swept past, flipping the corner of the folder inside. But I didn't look back. The screen door creaked a few minutes later. I didn't look up. I knew the rhythm of those steps too well. "Mom." She paused in the doorway. I could feel her eyes on me. She always wore that pale blue cardigan when she had something hard to say, like it would soften the blow. She tugged on the sleeve now, fingers curling the fabric over and over. "Samantha," she said. Not Sam, not sweetheart, just the full name. Meant to sound calm. Meant to keep control. I stayed silent. She stepped onto the porch and slowly sat beside me on the swing. For a while, we just listened to the wind chimes. I didn't help her fill the silence. Not this time. "We didn't mean for you to find out like that," she said at last. I nodded. One sharp, silent nod. She sighed, not a dramatic one, but the kind people let out when they want you to feel sorry for them. "It's not that we don't love you, Sam." Still, I said nothing. Because if love doesn't come with fairness, with acknowledgement, with care, what is it? She placed her hand gently over mine. Her skin was warm, trembling slightly. "Vanessa's had a rougher time," she whispered. "She needs more." There it was, the excuse wrapped in love. "She needs more," I repeated. "So I get less. Or nothing." "You're steady," Mom said. "You always have been. You'll land on your feet. Steady, strong, reliable, labels that sound like compliments until you realize they're cages, until they become the reason people stop checking if you're okay. Because you look okay." I pulled my hand back. Slowly. With precision. "You could have told me," I said. "You could have asked. And maybe I would have said yes, but at least it would have been my choice." She looked away down toward the yard. That same yard I'd paid to have landscaped after a storm tore up the flower beds. Vanessa had called the bill oppressive when I mentioned it, said the wildness of nature had its own beauty. That time I didn't argue. This time I did. How much I asked. She flinched. "What? How much have you given her? What else is tied to her name?" She didn't answer. I turned toward her, voice low but unwavering. Mom, how much? She hesitated, then barely breathed the number 35,000, a pause. Yes. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my spine was steel. I stared at her, not with hate, not even with anger, just fatigue. The kind that settles into your bones when you've been carrying something for too long without ever setting it down. You didn't choose her because she needed it, I said. You chose her because you already owed it to her. Her eyes widened, but I didn't wait for a response. I stepped off the porch. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. That would have given them power. Instead, I did something worse in their eyes. I vanished. That night, I canceled the monthly auto deposit I'd set up for their utility bills. I deleted the pharmacy reminders. I paused the grocery account. I left their family group chat on mute. No announcement, no grand confrontation, just an empty space where I used to be. And for the first time in years, I felt something startling light. They didn't notice at first. A week passed without a single message from me and no one called. I imagined they told themselves I was busy, or maybe moody. Maybe Vanessa said I was processing energy. They probably assumed I needed space, and like always, they expected I'd come back. I didn't. By the second week, the cracks began to show. The first text came from Dad, water. Bill came in high this month. Can you check the account? I didn't reply. Then Mom, we're out of those low-sodium crackers you always bring. Vanessa forgot to grab them. I left it unread. The subtext was clear. You're the one who handles this. Why aren't you handling it? They weren't worried. Not yet, just mildly inconvenienced. Then came the shift. Week 3, another message from Mom. Not a greeting, not a question, just a sentence. The mortgage is due. Can you send what you usually do? I stared at the words for a long time. So cold, so transactional. No, hi, how have you been? No, we miss you. Just a number. A need. I typed only 3 words in response. Ask Vanessa. It's her house now. Then hit send. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it buzz until it stopped. Then again. And again. Another message came in. Please don't be like this. We need to talk. But there was nothing left to say. They hadn't just cut me out of a will. They'd cut me out of their emotional economy long ago, only realizing the cost now that the withdrawals had stopped. That night, Vanessa finally reached out. Danny, don't make this a big deal. Just help them, like always. Like always. Like it was tradition, a reflex, a duty I was born into and could never resign from. I stared at her message and felt something odd. I wasn't angry. I was hollow. I wrote back, You're the one they chose, Vanessa, so be the choice. She didn't reply. The next morning, I woke up to a transfer request, $3,200, the exact amount of the mortgage plus late penalties. No message, no subject line, just the number. I declined it. 1 minute later, a voicemail. We could lose the house if you don't help us. It was Dad's voice, tired, not pleading, accusing. You'd let your parents go homeless? I almost laughed. They weren't homeless. They were just uncomfortable. For the first time, they were feeling what I had absorbed for years without complaint. The scrambling, the calculating, the constant background fear of will we make it. I turned off my phone, and it was quiet. Not peaceful, not joyful, just quiet. And in that stillness, I realized something. They didn't lose me when they changed the will. They lost me when they assumed I'd never leave. Silence never lasts in my family, not when there's blame to assign. The first sign came from Aunt Lori, a voicemail unusual in itself. She rarely called, always said she didn't want to get in the middle of family stuff. Her voice was hesitant. Hi, honey. I'm not taking sides, of course not. But your mom's worried sick. Maybe just talk to them. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened Facebook for the first time in weeks. And there it was, a photo of the front porch. Mom and Dad sitting close together on the steps, smiles carefully practiced. The caption read, "We gave everything to our children, but sometimes giving isn't enough." Dozens of likes, heart emojis, concerned comments, one from Vanessa. Some people think family is about money. They forget it's about showing up. My hands clenched before I could stop them. They were rewriting the story. I wasn't the daughter who had stayed, the one who paid, who carried, who went without. I was now the villain, the disappointment. And the worst part? People believed it. There were comments from cousins I hadn't seen since high school. "Your daughter will come around. Kids these days forget who raised them. This generation just doesn't understand sacrifice." Sacrifice. Funny word that. It sounded noble until you realized it only ever applied to people like me, the ones who kept giving even when no one gave back. Then came Dad's post, less subtle. "We gave everything, our time, our money, our love. We thought we raised them right, but in the end you can't control who turns their back on you." He tagged me. No phone call, no private message. Just a public brand on a wall where strangers could weigh in. I didn't comment, but I watched the likes climb, watched people I thought knew me press little red hearts next to words that erased everything I'd ever done. Then came Vanessa. Of course, she shared Dad's post with her own caption, "Some people only care when they're getting something." I'd give anything to protect Mom and Dad. I guess not everyone sees family that way. I read it twice, then a third time. This was the same woman who hadn't paid rent in years, who had taken $35,000 and watched the house rot, who forgot their medical appointments, ignored utility notices, and once claimed dishwasher noise was affecting her creativity. And now she was the hero. The devoted daughter. The good one. The comments were worse. "You're such a good soul, Vanessa. Your sister should be ashamed. They gave her everything, and she still wanted more. They didn't know the truth, but they didn't want it either. They wanted a story, and my family gave them one. I might have stayed silent. I might have let it pass, but then I saw her name. Kelly, my cousin, the one who once told me, 'You're the glue in this family,' the one who came to me after her divorce crying on my couch while I made soup. She had liked the post, just a heart emoji, no comment, no defense, just that. It hit harder than I expected, maybe because I thought she saw me, maybe because I thought someone still did. I closed the app, sat in the dark, and for the first time in weeks, something inside me broke. Not loud, not messy, just a quiet, final click. They weren't just telling a new story, they were erasing me from the old one. They came on a Thursday. I should have expected it. The messages hadn't worked. The guilt had lost its sting. The public pity parade wasn't getting the sympathy they'd hoped for, so now they escalated. I was in the middle of a team sync when my phone buzzed. Front desk. "Ms. Rivers, your parents are here, and a man who says he's your brother." I stared at the phone, frozen. "They said it's urgent. Should I send them up?" I paused, then spoke slowly, evenly. "Please tell them I'm not available and that they're not expected." A silence on the other end. "Understood. But they said they'll wait." "Then let them." 20 minutes later, another buzz. A text from Mom. "We're downstairs. Open the door." Then another, "We're not leaving until we talk to you." I didn't reply. I finished my meeting, replied to 2 emails, then calmly walked to the elevator. When I stepped into the lobby, they were by the glass entry doors, too close together, like they were holding each other upright. Like they'd rehearsed the posture of concern. Dad stood tall, chest-puffed, hands on hips. Mom clutched her purse like it was a lifeline. Vanessa looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. They turned as I approached. No one said anything. I didn't speak either. Just stopped a few feet away, arms crossed back straight. Calm. Mom was the first to break. "Samantha," she began, voice already tight. "We need to talk." I didn't move. Dad's tone shifted fast, more edge than concern. "You'd really let us lose the house over this?" I met his eyes. "You really thought I wouldn't?" He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You left me out. You handed everything to Vanessa. You told yourselves I'd understand. And now you're here asking for the same support I gave you quietly for years. No one answered. Mom stepped forward, voice softer now as if volume could rewrite truth. We thought you'd be okay. You've always been strong. I gave a faint nod. You used that as an excuse to forget me. Vanessa finally spoke. Mumbled, really. I didn't ask for any of this. I turned to her. But you took it. She looked away. Dad's hands dropped to his sides, now more defensive than confident. We raised you, fed you, gave you everything. You owe us something. I almost smiled. Almost. I paid that debt every month, every year, and you erased me anyway. Mom's voice cracked. We didn't mean to hurt you. I stepped forward 1 inch, just enough for my words to hit closer. Then why did you wait for me to disappear before realizing I was the one holding it all up? They said nothing. Vanessa shifted her weight. Dad clenched his jaw. Mom blinked rapidly, like holding back tears. And then, he stepped forward. Can we just go upstairs? Just talk in private. I raised a hand. Don't. He froze. You're not coming up. You're not coming in. I looked at all three of them. I won't be your answer this time. Silence. Not angry. Not cruel. Just final. They stood there, 3 people who once called themselves my family, and I finally knew I didn't owe them a thing. I turned and walked away back into the elevator. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't need to. The silence I gave them was louder than anything they could shout back. At first, the messages kept coming, a familiar rhythm. Mom led with softness. Please, just talk to us. We're still family. Then came Dad, all hard lines and guilt. You're punishing us for a misunderstanding. You're better than this. Vanessa barely said anything. Just one line. You know they can't handle all this without you. But I didn't answer, not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to defend. They had already decided who I was in their story, the ungrateful one, the one who disappeared, the one who let the house slip. They painted that version so loudly that they didn't notice the one thing louder than any accusation: absence. And in that absence, something unexpected began to grow. Peace. I started sleeping better. No longer waking up in a rush to check reminders. No more scanning for overdue bills. No panic texts, no anxiety-laced calls during meetings. Just stillness. I cooked for myself, not for anyone else. Not what was on Mom's restricted diet or Vanessa's clean days, just what I wanted. One evening I played music in the apartment, real music. Loud, messy, with lyrics. Not the soft instrumental stuff I'd always chosen so no one would be overstimulated. I danced barefoot in my living room until I laughed. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed alone. It was strange how quickly the weight left once you stopped dragging it. I stopped checking their Facebooks. I stopped rehearsing what I'd say if they showed up again. I even deleted the family group chat entirely. It didn't feel like erasing. It felt like editing. Because I finally understood something. I wasn't the villain in their version of the story. I was just the one who stopped playing the role they wrote for me. And if that made me invisible in their narrative, so be it. Because in mine, I was finally starting to exist. It came in a plain envelope. No return address, no stamp. Just slid under my apartment door sometime between morning coffee and my second Zoom meeting. Inside was a copy of a foreclosure notice, not addressed to me, but I knew the house number, I knew the street, I knew the porch swing I'd replaced the tree in the yard Vanessa carved her initials into the deck I'd paid to fix when Dad threw his back out. The letter was just a copy, but the message was clear. They were out of time. I sat on the edge of the kitchen table, the paper loose in my hand, and stared at it. The font was dry, bureaucratic, unfeeling. It didn't care about loyalty or sacrifice or birth order. It just calculated late payments, unpaid interest, and risk. This letter had more honesty than any conversation we'd had in years. I flipped it over and grabbed a pen. For a second, I considered writing something petty, something biting, something final. What I wrote instead was quiet. Maybe you should have left it to someone who could manage it. I didn't send it. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and made lunch. Simple as that. No tears, no panic, no impulse to step in. There was a time I would have done it differently. I would have called the mortgage company, asked for an extension, negotiated a temporary hardship deferral, wired a payment from my emergency savings, begged them not to report it to collections. I would have told myself it was about protecting the home, protecting us. But now I knew the truth. That house never protected me. I was the one who protected it. The one who kept the lights on, the one who filled the fridge, the one who balanced everyone's chaos in the name of love. And they thought I'd keep doing it forever, that they could strip my name off every legal page, then turn around and ask for help like nothing had changed. They didn't understand yet. This wasn't revenge, it was revelation. That afternoon, I logged into the county property database. Their address was listed as at risk, behind on payments, no buffer remaining. The equity they'd built had been drained probably in the first month after the inheritance, maybe on things they thought would buy time, or buy silence. But money runs out fast when it's trying to replace a person, especially one like me. A few days later, I walked past a bus stop near work and saw something that stopped me cold. A flyer posted on the glass wall, moving sale. Everything must go. It had their address. In smaller print, by appointment only. I took a photo, then deleted it, not out of anger, but because it didn't belong to me anymore. That home, that life, that role, none of it was mine to carry. That week, Mom posted another photo, her and Dad on the porch again. Same pose, same sad smiles. Caption, "We raised them with love. We did our best, but sometimes love isn't enough. No names, no accusations, but everyone knew who they meant." Then came the comments. "You two are amazing parents. You deserve better. Today's kids just don't appreciate sacrifice." Dad followed with one of his own, more pointed. "We gave everything to our children: time, love, money. We thought we raised them with values. But you can't control who turns their back on you." He tagged me. No call, no email, just a public scarlet letter. I didn't comment, didn't message, didn't even screenshot it. Because for the first time, it wasn't about me anymore. They wanted someone to blame for the fall. But I hadn't built the cliff. I had just stopped throwing them ropes they never held on to. Sometimes you don't need to start a fire, you just need to stop carrying the water. The worst betrayal wasn't in the will. It wasn't in the money. It was in the rewriting. Slow, subtle, insidious. I watched it unfold across platforms and people like a campaign, one crafted not to heal but to reclaim power. Every time they posted another photo of the porch, another vague caption about lost connections or the pain of parenthood, it became clearer. They didn't miss me. They missed what I did. The food deliveries, the bills paid without asking, the quiet stability I provided so they could continue being messy. Now that it was gone, they were scrambling not to reconnect but to rewrite, to recategorize me from provider to problem, and people believed them. That's what stung more than anything. It wasn't just the strangers, it was the familiar names, old classmates, church friends. Even my cousin Kelly, she once told me, "You're the only person in this family who knows how to listen without interrupting." And now she was liking Dad's posts about values being lost in the next generation. No words, just a heart emoji. I sat in the dark, laptop closed, and felt it sink in. They hadn't just forgotten me. They were erasing me. Not suddenly, not violently, but gradually. Comment by comment, caption by caption. Like I had never carried the groceries paid, the taxes fixed, the furnace handled their paperwork. Like I had never been the one who always showed up. It was astonishing, not because it was new, but because it was finally visible. For years, I'd been fading in the background of my own family. My reliability had become my camouflage. They only saw me when something broke. They only called me when there was a cost. And when I stopped showing up, they didn't call to apologize. They called to collect. When that didn't work, they turned me into the story's antagonist, the ungrateful daughter, the one who disappeared, the one who chose money over love. But here's the thing, no one tells you about being forgotten. Eventually, it gives you permission to forget them back. And when you do, the silence becomes peaceful. I stopped checking their accounts, stopped rereading old messages, stopped hoping for an apology that was never going to arrive. I even found myself humming one morning while brushing my teeth. A small tune, nothing special, but mine. That same day, I passed by a coworker in the hallway who said, "You seem lighter lately." I smiled, because she was right. I wasn't angry. I wasn't mourning. I was simply absent from the version of me that used to need their approval. Later that week, I walked by the neighborhood where I grew up. I hadn't meant to. It was just one of those accidental paths life takes when you stop obsessing over the map. The house looked the same, faded shutters, lawn starting to brown. But something had changed. A for sale sign stood out front. The swing I had fixed was gone. So was the wind chime. The porch light was off. I stood on the sidewalk and stared for a while, not with longing, just curiosity, like looking at a museum exhibit that used to belong to you but now holds no power. I didn't move closer. I didn't need to. I already knew what had collapsed inside. It wasn't just a house. It was the illusion that I had ever truly belonged there. And as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed again. Mom. Dad. Then a voicemail. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. Probably something about forgiveness, about responsibility, about just talking. But here's what they still didn't understand. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to punish them. I had just finally understood that being needed is not the same as being loved. And for the first time in my life, I chose neither. I chose me. They tried once more. A final push. They didn't text this time. They showed up. Again. But not at work. This time it was my building. The front desk buzzed mid-morning. "Your parents are here again, and the woman from last time. Same group." Vanessa. I closed my laptop slowly, then stood by the window and peeked down. There they were, standing awkwardly outside the glass doors, Mom pacing, Dad stiff, Vanessa leaning against the wall like she wasn't really part of it but not leaving either. Another buzz. "They say it's urgent. Should I send them up?" I took a breath, then answered softly, "No. Tell them I'm not receiving visitors, and I won't be." A pause. Then, understood. I didn't go down, didn't wave, didn't acknowledge. I made tea. By the time I returned to the window, they were gone. I thought I might feel something after. Relief, vindication, sadness maybe, but I didn't. I just felt still. That night they tried one last card. A letter, handwritten, slid under the door. The handwriting was Mom's, curved, careful, familiar. It wasn't long. No dramatic apology, just a few lines. "We raised you the best we could. We're sorry if that wasn't enough. But we need you. Please come back." There was no return address, no name signed, just, "We need you." But they didn't need me. They needed the old version of me, the one who paid and stayed quiet, the one who said yes even when her heart screamed no. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer beside the foreclosure notice, not to keep, just to remind myself. They didn't lose me because of one will. They lost me every time they assumed I wouldn't leave, every time they mistook my presence for permanence. I don't know if they'll try again. Maybe, but it doesn't matter, because I'm not at the door anymore, and I won't be. They came back one last time. I had just finished watering the plants on my tiny balcony when I heard the intercom buzz. Again. This time I didn't answer right away. I let it ring once, twice. I already knew who it was. Then, "Ms. Rivers, your family is downstairs. They say it's urgent." I looked out the window, and there they were. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, all of them. The same way they'd always stood at the threshold of my life together, determined, and just a little too late. I didn't move. Not right away. I didn't rush to get shoes. I didn't scramble to explain or prepare. I simply stared for a moment, then said into the intercom, "Tell them I'm not available." The woman at the desk hesitated. "They said they'll wait." "Then let them." I made tea, sat on the couch, read a chapter from the book I'd started weeks ago and never found time to finish until now. An hour passed, maybe more. Another buzz. This time it was a message. "Mom, please, just 5 minutes. We'll leave after." Then another. "Dad, you don't treat family like this. You owe us a conversation." And finally, Vanessa. "If you don't talk to them, this is all going to fall apart. It already had, and it wasn't my job to rebuild it. I went downstairs anyway, eventually. Not for them, for me. I needed to look them in the eye one last time. Not to explain, but to confirm what I already knew, that I was done." They were still standing outside the building when I stepped through the glass doors. They turned all at once, like they'd rehearsed it. Mom's face was hopeful. Dad looked furious. Vanessa had her arms crossed, guarded. Finally, Mom breathed, stepping forward. I held my ground. "You don't get to just shut us out," Dad said. "We're your family." I looked at him, calm. "You shut me out when you made your decision. I'm just living like it mattered." "That's not fair," Mom whispered. "We were trying to protect you. You always had more. You were stable." "No," I said. I was just silent. "And you mistook that for stability." Vanessa scoffed under her breath. "You're acting like a victim." I turned to her. "No, I'm acting like someone who finally walked away from being treated like a tool." Dad's tone sharpened. "You think this makes you better?" "No," I said evenly. "It makes me free." They weren't prepared for this version of me, the one who didn't flinch, the one who didn't cry or cave or explain herself into exhaustion. They came for the old Samantha, the reliable one, the emotional janitor, the background support beam. But that version of me no longer lived here. Mom reached forward, tears brimming. "We didn't mean to lose you." I gave a sad smile. "But you did. The moment you believed I wouldn't leave. The moment you thought I'd keep giving, even when you'd stopped seeing me." Vanessa looked away. Dad clenched his jaw. No one spoke. And I knew then it was over. Not with drama, not with doors slammed or voices raised, but with a calm boundary they couldn't cross anymore. "I hope you figure things out," I said gently, "but it won't be with my help." I turned, walked back into the building, heard Mom call my name once, then twice. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I didn't owe them that. When I got back upstairs, I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. Still me. But taller somehow. Straighter. Quieter, yes, but not small. Never small again. It started with a post. A photo of the house front porch, white siding, cracked steps I once paid to fix. Mom and Dad standing together, hands clasped. Captioned, "We gave everything to our children. Sometimes love just isn't enough." It was vague, strategic, passive, but everyone who knew us would understand what it meant. I watched it quietly from a burner account. They didn't tag me, but they didn't need to. The implication was loud. The comments came quickly. "Some kids don't appreciate sacrifice these days. You're such strong parents. Family means giving without expecting back." And then I saw it. Vanessa's comment. A simple, "We're still trying, but some people stop listening." That one stung. Not because I was surprised, but because it was calculated. She knew exactly how to say just enough to make herself the martyr. But it didn't end there. The next day, Dad posted too. Longer, more pointed. "We thought we raised our daughter right. We thought we taught her loyalty. We were wrong. The world teaches some people that independence means forgetting where you came from." He tagged me this time. Full name, no warning, no message beforehand, just tossed me into the public narrative like a villain in a morality tale. The likes piled up, the shares spread, people commented without knowing a single truth. And I stayed silent, because what was there to say? They weren't speaking to me, they were speaking about me, and they had the louder platform. But the blow that hit the deepest didn't come from them. It came from Kelly, my cousin, the one who once hugged me at Grandpa's funeral and whispered, "You're the only one in this family with a backbone." The one I used to bake cookies with during holidays, the one who once told me, "If you ever leave, take me with you." She liked both posts, no comment, just 2 red heart emojis, and that more than all the words, all the guilt trips, all the noise, that was what fractured something inside me. Because Kelly had known. She'd seen it. She'd heard the late-night calls, the emergencies, the way I bent myself in half to hold that family up. And now she was liking the version of the story where I was the ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned them. I sat on the floor of my living room and stared at the screen. Not crying, not shaking, just still. That was the final click. Not a break, not an explosion. Just that quiet internal shift when you stop expecting people to come through. Even the ones who once swore they would. They weren't just painting me as the bad guy, they were erasing the truth. And people were choosing the prettier lie, because that's easier. Villains are simple. Stories with clean sides make better gossip. But I didn't need to clear my name, because the version of me that needed to be believed, she was gone. I didn't plan to go. It just happened. A slow Sunday afternoon. The kind with soft light and no noise. I went for a walk. No destination. Just movement. My path curved instinctively pulled by something old and familiar, like muscle memory. I found myself turning onto Ashwood Lane, the street I grew up on. It looked the same. Too much so. Cracked sidewalks, overgrown hedges, that one red mailbox still bent at the corner. And there, in the middle of it all, the house. Their house. Once mine too, but only in a technical sense. The first thing I noticed was the for sale sign. Wooden, faded, slightly tilted. It leaned forward like it was tired of standing. The grass was dying. The porch light was off. The windows shut tight, curtain lines crooked from inside. But more than that, something was missing. The swing I installed, gone. The wind chime. Mom insisted was too loud, but refused to take down gone too. The small potted fern I'd bought for Mother's Day 5 years ago, dead. And I stood at the edge of the sidewalk. No closer. I didn't need to see inside to know what had fallen apart. I had seen it long before the roof started leaking, long before the notice came. That house never held me. I held it. I was the invisible scaffolding, the wiring no one saw, the support beam no one thanked, the quiet maintenance in the background of their comfort. And now that I was gone, it was collapsing, not in flames, not with drama, but with a slow, inevitable gravity. They couldn't afford it, not just financially but emotionally, because for years they'd relied on the idea that I'd never leave, that I'd always show up, fix what was broken, fund what was missing, absorb the damage so they didn't have to feel it. But here it was, reality, not loud, not explosive, just empty. I wondered what they told the realtor. Did they mention the daughter who used to pay the mortgage? The one who kept the utilities running from 3 cities away? Or did they just say they were downsizing? My phone buzzed. I didn't check it right away. I already knew the name that would be on the screen. Probably Mom. Maybe Dad. Or even worse, Vanessa trying one last emotional Hail Mary. I let it buzz, then fade. Again. Buzz, pause, buzz. Finally it stopped. Silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. The peaceful kind. I looked at the house one more time. Took it all in. The chipped paint near the garage. The half-painted fence I never had time to finish. The bedroom window that used to be mine now closed tight. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. Because I wasn't mourning something I lost. I was releasing something I'd never truly had. The version of home I tried to believe in. The version of family I sacrificed for. I used to think walking away meant giving up. Now I knew it meant reclaiming. My breath felt light in my chest. My shoulders didn't ache like they used to. I turned, not out of defiance, just because it was time. No last look, no silent goodbyes. The house would sell, or it wouldn't. They'd move, or stay. But whatever happened, it would happen without me. And that was the most honest ending I could offer them. Not rage, not revenge, just absence, and for the first time they'd have to live inside it. A week passed. No calls, no knocks, no more messages. The house hadn't sold yet. I checked the listing once just out of habit. Then I stopped. I was no longer watching to see what would happen. I had already let it go. That silence, the one they used to fear, now it was mine. And it was no longer a punishment. It was peace. I started sleeping better. Not just deeper, but freer. No midnight calendar alerts to reorder prescriptions. No morning guilt about whether I'd texted back fast enough. No financial spreadsheets titled Mom plus Dad Bills. I made breakfast and ate it hot. I cleaned the apartment not because guests were coming, but because I liked how the sunlight landed on a freshly wiped counter. I started reading again. Not articles about retirement funds and Medicare policies, but novels. Fiction, stories that didn't ask me to solve anything. One afternoon, I bought myself flowers, something I'd always considered wasteful. They sat on my kitchen table, unapologetically bright. Yellow tulips. Mom always said they didn't last long, but they didn't need to. They were here. Now. Just like me. I didn't talk about what happened, not to friends, not to coworkers, not even to the barista who once asked why I looked tired every Tuesday at 7:45 a.m. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to prove, no one to explain myself to. They had their version of the story, but I had my life back. And that was enough. I didn't expect closure, not the kind with violins or long letters or surprise apologies, and certainly not from them. But it came anyway. Quietly. One morning I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror on the way to work. Same face, same eyes. But something had changed. There was no tightness in my jaw, no permanent crease in my forehead from holding in frustration, no flinch when I heard the buzz of a phone. I stood there for a moment studying myself. I looked present, not alert, not braced, just here. That used to be rare. I remember walking down these same hallways months ago, shoulders tense, heart, heavy mind full of calculations. Who needed what? What was due next? What had I forgotten? But now I was thinking about lunch. A new recipe I wanted to try, whether I had enough rosemary at home, if I should get a new pan this weekend. That was it. Small, unremarkable thoughts. But they were mine, and they weren't about fixing anything for anyone else. They didn't carry weight. They didn't have guilt sewn into them. They weren't echoes of someone else's need. I walked to work without checking my messages. No dread, no background panic, just air, and breath, and a body that finally felt like it belonged to me. Later that night, I sat down at my desk and opened an old folder, one I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were job offers I never pursued, graduate programs I once bookmarked, design ideas I'd scribbled in moments of stolen excitement before guilt came knocking. I smiled. Not bitterly, just with quiet recognition. The person who made these plans had once hoped she'd get permission to chase them. Now, she didn't need permission, just her own yes, and that she finally had. I didn't start over dramatically. No bold declarations, no new chapter captions on Instagram. Just a slow return to myself, like rinsing off layers of dust, like remembering a favorite song after forgetting the melody. And somewhere in that process I forgave myself, not for leaving, but for staying so long, for thinking I had to earn a place in a family that only called it love when I was useful, for thinking being needed meant I was wanted, for thinking silence was loyalty. It wasn't. Silence had been survival, and now it was choice. I closed the folder. Not because the dreams inside it were over, but because I was ready to make space for them again. And this time I wouldn't ask anyone what they thought. It came late. Nearly midnight. A soft ping on my phone while I was brushing my teeth. I glanced at the screen. Mom, first message in weeks. Hi, sweetheart. Just wondering if you're okay. I saw the weather's getting colder. Hope you're staying warm. No questions, no demands. Just a single check-in wrapped in a memory of care. I stood still, toothbrush in hand, staring at the screen. The old version of me would have melted, would have replied instantly, would have said, "Thanks, Mom. I'm fine. Hope you are too." But I didn't move. Not because I was angry, not because I was punishing her, but because I'd finally understood something: kindness doesn't undo patterns, and softness doesn't rewrite history. That message was a thread, a small one, but still tethered to the same net that once held me tight. I finished brushing, set the phone down, face down, walked to bed, and as I slid under the covers, the silence felt warm, not empty. Not a punishment, not a war, just a choice. To rest, to breathe, to finally live a life that belonged only to me. Sometimes the people who raised us are also the ones who taught us to stay quiet. But silence isn't love. And being the strong one doesn't mean being invisible. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm, especially when they never even asked how cold you were. Walking away doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you finally saw your worth. If you've ever been the one holding everything together in silence, leave A in the comments, or just type, "I finally left." You don't need to explain. We see you. And if you're still in it, still carrying what they won't just know, you're not alone.